All right, welcome to Advice for Grad Students. I'm Phil Haun, and with me today is a friend and colleague, Jon Lindsay, who's an associate professor at Georgia Tech. Welcome, Jon, to Advice for Grad Students.
Thanks, Phil. It's great to be here.
All right, great. And just a reminder, these are our views and not of our institutions, and let's just get right into it. Jon, tell us, what advice do you have as far as a PhD as a second act?
All right. Well, Phil, this is a great topic for you and I to be talking about. Both of us had careers in the military before, for some reason, we decided to go into academia. And, on the whole, for me, this has been a good experience, but there are some mixed aspects as well that I wanted to talk to. So, we may have some students out there that are watching this, and maybe they were in the military or policy, or they were out making a lot of money before they decided to become an academic and make nothing. Let's maybe kind of just talk about some of the things, at least that I've experienced. Again, this is all my own experience. Your mileage may vary. The MIT SSP program was great because I think that there were several of us, you, me, Colin Jackson was there, and he had a prior life in business and in the military, and all of these guys and gals brought a different perspective than you saw from other places. And I think it really, enriched the conversations. And I think a lot of the other students got a lot out of it as well. I think you come in with a certain advantage. And one of the biggest problems, I think, in international relations and security studies is they have a lot of virgins talking about sex. Right? They've never been there. They've never done that. They don't really have in their bones what conflict looks like and means. And, you've got that, right? If you come from the military, if you come from the business, you probably have kind of a competitive sense, or at least you stewed in a big bureaucracy. So you understand how management works and rules work, and how, stupid people can be when they're trying to coordinate large projects. I think that this kind of like in your bones feeling for how large organizations work when they're trying to cooperate or compete is just utterly, utterly invaluable. So whether you choose to make those intuitions explicit or not, that's great, but it is there and it is available. Now for me, pardon the historical personal digression here. My trip back to academia, right, was I started off in philosophy and cognitive science in college. I always thought that I would be a professor, but I thought that it would be, more in philosophy or, artificial intelligence, something like that. I owed the Navy 4 years to pay for my college. Ended up staying for 8 because I was surprised to find how interesting it was, and the quality of people that I was interacting with, right? Thought it was going to be all these mouth-breathing knuckle draggers. And other than Phil, right, I was surprised to see that wasn't always the case, right? So I was interested in the same questions about how does information work? How do people make sense of the world? How do they use technology to do it? But suddenly I was interested in that in, a more conflicted strategic environment. And I knew nothing about strategy and social science. So I thought, well, what the hell? I'll get my PhD in it. I don't necessarily recommend that any of you make decisions like this, right? I don't think I totally realized that I would need to be a political scientist once I got a political science PhD. I was more attracted to MIT, quite honestly, than the discipline. I was like, okay, this has all the pieces and parts and people in place to do interesting interdisciplinary work and look at it. And so I very much built on my own, experience as an intelligence officer in the Navy, thinking about how to put together, large systems and bridge the divide between intelligence and operations. Sometimes things went well, sometimes things didn't go well. And I wanted to try and understand these processes of perception through an organizational and strategic lens. So for me, having that practical experience was great because, it went directly into my dissertation and eventually a book. So you may or may not, explicitly use your experience, but it was great. Okay, so I thought I would how much time do we have? We got about 5 minutes left. So kind of have a list of, I think, things that are good if you've got prior experience doing something, and maybe some minefields that you want to kind of navigate through. All right. On the good side, we've talked about a lot of these. You spent your formative years doing something cool, right? Like, you can kind of feel sad for some of these young kids. I'm sorry, some of you who are listening, right? You're spending your 20s in grad school, right? Should be out having adventures and like doing things and making lots of money. Okay. Well, some of you have already done that, right? And the others, you're so committed to your intellectual journey that this is how you're doing that. So good on you. Okay. But you have a reason for coming back, right? Maybe some of these younger kids, like, they really care about political science, but maybe some of them just liked college and they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and they kind of wandered into a PhD, right? Some of your colleagues, you will see this, right? You presumably like walked away from a career and opportunities and money-making opportunities, and you knew why you wanted to do this, right? And knowing that is so important, right? I mean, like, as Phil knows, like, that's half the battle of a PhD, right? Figuring out why the hell you're there, what you're doing, why you're gonna like be alone and struggling, by yourself in the library with all of these things. If you don't understand that, like, then it's going to take you 6 or 7 or 8 years, like some of our colleagues do. But you take a guy like Ken Pollack, who was a CIA analyst, came to MIT. He's like, I want to understand why Arabs suck at war, right? And that's going to be my dissertation. And every single class he took, right, he wrote a paper that was a chapter that in his dissertation, and then he kind of wrote and rewrote it and like got it out in 4 years, and it became a great book. Okay, so like, that was a guy that was totally focused, and we've seen others like that. Okay, so you'll probably get done faster because you know what you want to do. You've got contacts and opportunity out in the real world that can help you with your field work. Maybe you'll be, you can do what Phil kind of did. We're like, we have something, we're curious from our previous life. We want to do some academic study of it. Maybe you're like sick of that. And you want to just totally remake yourself. Well, like, this is an opportunity to really take the time and do something really different, but on this more mature foundation. So, and finally, I want to say, I think, now that I've sat on some hiring committees, I would say that practical experience is a huge plus in the job market, caveat, as long as you do the work, right? It is not a substitute. You've got to have the academic excellence. You've got to have the publications. You've got to have all of that. But if on top of that, you've got, this maturity, and that's great. That's good too. Okay. So those are the good things. What are some of the dangers, right? One is, like, let's face it, there's just going to be an age difference. Part of that's awesome, right? You'll be exposed to like a different generation and different ideas, right? But sometimes, like, they'll just be a mismatch, right? Maybe young people are annoying, maybe they're smarter than you, and you're going to feel stupid, right? Like that Phil and I both occasionally had this experience as well, right? You're just around all these young wonder kids, and you can sort of wonder why you're there, right? They're going to get jobs, right? They're going to get promoted, right? Sometimes ahead of you, right? So you'll watch the children grow up and outrank you quickly, right? That's going to be weird. Maybe your family's going to be annoyed at you that you went into this academic thing and now you're earning chicken feed instead of whatever you were doing before. You've got an ethnographic feel for what it's like to be in conflict or business or policy, but that's also a problem. Now you've got some habits and some assumptions, right? And your thinking might be a little bit grooved. And now you're supposed to be thinking really big pictures, grand strategy, meaning of life, right? Enduring theories that are still going to be true in 100 years, right? If you spent all your time at the operational level of business or war, right, you're all into the inside baseball and you know how to make things happen within an organization, but you may not be as good at kind of like sticking your head up and thinking the big thoughts. So having to unlearn some of those habits, I think, is important. For me, this was actually, yeah, okay, 1 minute left. For me, this is a big deal, right? I mean, like, I was a young junior officer, so, and my focus was really the operational level, like, let's fix this, let's improve this, right? And having to think strategically and having to think in terms of societies, like, that was a big challenge. I had to, really retool in order to do that. Okay. And then a really subtle one, right? Phil, I don't know if you saw this, but I definitely saw this in a couple of our seasoned colleagues, that there was sometimes this air of, gosh, friction, to put it bluntly, even contempt sometimes for academics and sometimes even our mentors that we're there to learn from, but they don't know what you know. They haven't been there. They don't have the experience, right? And maybe you can get a little cocky thinking you do it. And I would just say, like, if you start to feel that, just check that, right? Because your job is to learn, right? And everybody has something to teach you. Okay. So even if it seems super abstract theory, like it's going to be relevant. So bottom line to finish up, right? Sunza was right. Know yourself, know the process. Like if you know why you're doing it and why you've decided to come back, like then you're going to be okay. All right. Um,
That's wonderful. So, John, you've just talked about my experience as well. You hit the highlights. That's exactly right. If you're a first or second year grad student and you've got a prior life, man, be humble. Yeah, you're going to keep that in your bag, learn what you can, and enjoy the time. But John's spot on. You have a huge advantage if you already know what you want to do. Just so stick it with there. And anyway, for the rest of you, thanks for joining us today on Advice for Grad Students.